The great Jasmine Thomas is here for the first time as a coach. We'll be
Mhm.
talking all about how she got there, and we're going to spend some time on the legacy as a player because that needs to happen too. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Over 175,000 of you have showed up already here in January, the way we show up for you 6 days a week, talking about the past, present, and future of women's basketball. And of course, it is not just me, it is everyone who does the hard work every day over at the Next. At thenexthoops.com, we have over 100 reported pieces every single month. I think it's fair to imagine you will have that and more in February as we head into free agency. Go to thenexthoops.com and subscribe. It's $9 a month, $72 a year. It all goes towards the hardworking writers, editors, and photographers who care about this game the way you do. And I am feeling sentimental, as I told Jasmine Thomas, today's guest here, somebody who I've had the privilege of covering for a very long time. And if you'll permit a brief bit of personal privilege, I just want to take you guys sort of inside what it means to cover the WNBA, which is to say that there are certain players who you can go to understand what's happening, who are going to not just have that knowledge on the court, but are generous with their time and willing to share that with us and willing to explain it with us to bring us up to date. Jasmine Thomas has always been that player. So it was no surprise that in conjunction with her announcement that she was retiring, that a WNBA team, in this case, the Dallas Wings, snapped her up to get that wisdom to introduce it to their players as well. Jasmine, welcome to the program. I just want to kind of get our listeners to the point where you were when you finally made that decision that it was time to end what has been such a distinguished playing career.
I would say, to be honest, it probably was really heavier on my mind around Thanksgiving. Some opportunities came up to me kind of quickly after, like as soon as the off season started, there were some opportunities for me to do things off the court. And over the last few seasons, once you hit your 30s, you do start thinking a little bit more about, life off the court and, life after basketball. And I wasn't ready to retire yet early in my 30s, but it was, those off seasons were used to kind of explore some things. So I was broadcasting, then I got injured, which really made me kind of like put things into perspective of like, what are some other things I'm interested in that I could possibly do after playing. And then once this season ended, I knew I was a free agent, and really just had to sit with myself of like, what really is exciting me right now? And is it playing some more basketball and, having an opportunity to still keep chasing that one thing that I wanted, which was a championship? Or was I more excited about some of these off the court opportunities? So once I started talking to the Wings, it was just too good to pass up. It was aligning in every way, every passion that I have, I'm able to still pursue in this position and do it with great people. So I am really, really excited about that.
For sure. And definitely throughout segment two, we're going to be talking a lot about the wins, the new opportunity, a chance to work directly with Latricia Trammell every day alone is worth the price of admission, of course. But there's so much to that role. We cannot let this pass without talking about your playing career. And so drafted out of Duke in 2011, it's easy, I feel like, to overlook a lot of a women's basketball playing legacy, in part because it is in pieces. And let me give you an example of what I mean. You have played 390 games in your WNBA career, which is enormous. I mean, an Iron Woman in a lot of different ways that we'll get into as we drill into it. But you played over 300 additional games overseas. You are playing in the Czech Republic and in Russia and in Israel and in Poland, and putting up the numbers, going everywhere and doing it around the world. That has to take a toll. And so when you kind of think back, bigger picture, is there any part of you that wonders, gee, what would the shape of my career have been like 10 years later if I'm coming around during the time of AU and coming around during the time of PMAs and, all of those things? I just wonder how you kind of put that in perspective.
Earlier on in my career, I feel like overseas was a challenge, leaving home and, just all the different things that get you outside of your comfort zone when you go overseas. But honestly, I really learned to love the experience. I love traveling. I love the people that I met. I loved a lot of the organizations that I played for. So it's hard to say, okay, if I had all these other opportunities because my career, I became a pro in this time, I wouldn't go overseas. I don't necessarily feel like I can say that wholeheartedly. But for sure, I would explore all the options that I had. I love what they're doing at AU. I think it's great how they're marketing the game. You just hear how the players talk about, bringing the love of the sport back, and just the experience that they have with AU is something special. And I love what they're building there. And I also like a lot of the, marketing opportunities that players have now, being able to do marketing agreements with teams and with the W to be able to stay stateside and still grow the game and work with partners and sponsors. Like, I think these are all really good opportunities for athletes to, just build their brand, but also develop professional skills. So there is a lot of things going on right now. That's a huge piece of my player programming role with the Wings, is to be able to bridge some of that and access a lot of the opportunities that, the dynamic women of the W want to experience.
It's huge and enormous. And again, it comes back to, for me, and this is the way I've heard so many players talk about it, having choices is really significant. Being able to have these different paths, even as you are playing. And so it's fantastic to see, is obviously only continuing to grow. And I'm delighted as well. In terms of what kind of player you were on the court, so that people fully understand this, there's so many different numbers you can go to. The 5 times that you've made all defensive teams in this league, including 2 times all defensive first team. That feels a little low to me as somebody who has watched you play defense for over a decade, but just the same, the net result was you kept showing up. And so from 2017 to 2020, you started 154 of 158 possible regular season games, and then every single playoff game for Connecticut Sun teams that were in the playoffs each of those 4 seasons. And, you talked about that championship. We know how close you came. We were both in the building that night. You were a little more responsible than I was. I was just there to write the story of a Game 5 against the Mystics. But when you think back on that time, on that legacy of success, did it at some level surprise you? And the reason I ask it is that it was a challenge, I know, for you to get those roles, get those opportunities from the moment you were drafted. And we've talked about this the first few years. So much in the W is getting those chances. I just wonder, kind of when you think back on it, how much that came as a surprise to you.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like when you look back, like I didn't have an expectation of how my career would go. I just knew that I was going to show up, play hard, get better every year, go overseas, like take all the responsibility of, trying to grow my game every year and bring that back to the W as a different, better player. I feel like a lot of the dynamics of some of my teams early on, I kind of had to grow up as a leader and as a player faster than you would as, a rookie for 4 years is technically your rookie length. So I think between that and like coaching changes, it was hard for me to adjust to the league for a while. And then once I kind of found a groove and a comfort zone, I was, in Connecticut, being able to have that retention and consistency year after year to be able to grow with an organization, just provided a space for me to be confident in what I was doing and what we were, trying to accomplish. And Yeah, I feel like I experienced everything you can as an athlete, from coming in as a young player, from being I've been a starter, I've come off the bench, I've been in training camps where I'm showing up because I need to prove that I'm supposed to be here, like been an all-star, been in the finals, like any experience that you could have, I feel like that I have been able to feel that. And I hoped that being injured and coming back from an injury wasn't going to be part of my story, but honestly, I'm in a weird way grateful that it was. There were so many things I learned about myself. There was, I was able to put a lot about the game, about just life in general in perspective and the impact that I wanted to make and wanted to leave on the game. And I think in this transitional period, that is what I'm noticing. I have so much peace. I'm so grateful for my career and for where I'm headed and what my future is, that when I look back on my career, I feel like it literally groomed me to be in this point. Like I feel ready for this moment. So I'm excited.
It's amazing the way life prepares us, right, for what it is that we're looking for that's next. And it is very exciting. I do want to isolate on some of those highlights and talk about All-Star and talk about, everything that went along with it before I promise we'll get to the coaching too, but there's so much to go into, and we'll do that even more in segment 2. But first, want to let you guys know at home about our sponsor, about quiz.com. Quiz.com, that's quiz with 3 I's. This episode includes a sponsorship from quiz.com, and we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to give the listeners at home a chance to answer a question. Quiz has created an NBA set of trivia questions. The NBA, for those of you at home who may not know, is the games you can watch in between WNBA seasons if there's no women's college basketball or Athletes Unlimited on TV. And so the Knicks play in this NBA, which some of you may be familiar with. And I'm going to ask you, which player holds the record for most points scored in a single game for the Knicks? Is it Carmelo Anthony, Patrick Ewing, Walt Frazier, or Charles Oakley? I'll give you the answer in just a second, but first want to let you guys know that you too can go to app.quizwith3i's.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's quiz with 3 I's, just like a 3-pointer. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. The answer, friends at home, Carmelo Anthony, a very underrated player. I was actually in the building for that one. Had a chance to cover that one. Quiz.com. So we are back with Jasmine Thomas. And so, again, I was there in 2017 when you finally broke through and got that all-star nod. And I guess I wonder, someone who's as driven as you as a player, I'm sure so much of the motivation is internal. That said, what did it mean to you to get that kind of recognition? And what was that experience like back in 2017? What are your biggest memories from it?
I mean, I think the coolest thing about being recognized as an all-star for me is it was never something I was trying to get. I literally was just doing my thing, being myself and doing what my team needed. And it was one of the, fun. That was like the fun time of Connecticut Sun basketball. It felt like the start of when it got to, where it has been. And yeah, I just feel like the entire organization was recognized. Our whole staff was there. We had, 3 players that were out. It was just, I don't know. It really was just a great experience for me because it didn't feel like we were trying. We were just playing good basketball and, having fun, and it was being rewarded. So it was cool for me that my parents were able to fly out there. They don't fly a lot. They hate to travel. So for them to come all the way out to Seattle and experience that with me made it like one of my most memorable moments.
It was a great weekend throughout, a lot of celebration there. And like you said, part of a season where, and just people need to understand, you shot 29.7% from 3-point range over the first 5 years of your career. You made it a priority to turn this into something that was not just okay, but a plus in your game. You shot north of 40% from 3 that year. And over the final portion of your career, shot north of 36% from 3. So, you were just, I know you know this, but my listeners at home need to know this: constantly working at the craft, constantly working to get better. And the less we talk about the playoff format in 2017, the better, but it absolutely shouldn't have been the case. Three
I'm
full
glad you tried to change.
a one and done for a 3 and a 4 seed. Oh, we need to never go back to that, because that just robbed a lot of good teams of a chance of extended playoff runs. But, again, looking back on that moment, I know, Kurt Miller makes a decision that he's going to build a team around you as the point guard on that team. Did you feel like that responsibility helped you feel more comfortable being a vocal leader as well, which is, I know, something that you talked about pursuing and doing more later on in your career?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I was the point guard of the team, but I felt like we were building just with a culture of people that were gritty, that worked hard, that had something to prove, that wanted to make names for themselves. I think me being at the head of that at the point guard position was more so in a leadership role of, just like you said, being vocal, how I show up, how I'm able to, communicate with my teammates and get along with players. I think that was a role that I served very well. And I think that's something that I embraced. And for the rest of my career, felt like that was a role that I wanted to bring wherever I was. So, take that piece into this, player development, coaching position. That is a huge part of it for me. Of course, there's, Dallas is extremely talented. They have young talent. They have the opportunity. You see just in 1 year under Coach Trammell how, much they have grown and how much success they've had. So for me to be able to come add to that, from a leadership perspective, from a, been here, done this, knows what it takes to be able to kind of help with the culture and just being able to be a resource for them, whichever way they need, both on and off the court, that sounds like exactly what I want to do.
And made for it. Like you said, in all these different ways in the arc of your career. You talked about coming back from injury. And I know we spoke before you came back, and we talked during the season about coming back. And so now here you are on the other side of it. How meaningful did that turn out to be? And what's kind of the top line of wisdom that you're taking from that to be able to share with, unfortunately, the reality is players who are going to go through it themselves, of course, at the WNBA level?
I think the biggest thing for me that I learned is it was obviously like a competitive thing for me to want to come back from injury, to get my body to a place where I was healthy, where I felt strong, and I was able to do that. And even after the season, I felt that, that happened during the season. It wasn't something that, I was at my best and then the season started and I got to play through it. I was still working through all of that for like majority of the season. So it wasn't until after the season that I really felt my best. And so it was kind of crazy feeling that way, knowing like, hey, Jazz, you could keep doing this if you wanted to. Like, your body is good. Like, you are in a great place. Like, you could absolutely keep playing. But I think it was getting to that point that made me sit with, do you want to keep playing? It was more a matter of what I wanted and what I was ready for. And that's what I learned being injured. I can't say that I would make this same decision had that not happened. Even if maybe it was time to do it, I think it would have been harder for me to kind of understand where I was in making that decision. So yeah, I'm grateful for it because I feel really happy with all the possibility of what's to come in the future, and to be with an organization that really has an incredible roadmap for the future. And I love that.
The Winds are clearly on the rise, clearly have an opportunity to be among the elite. And if you'll, again, forgive the point of personal privilege, when they make decisions like hiring you, it's clear they get what is required for a WNBA team to get where they need to go. So we're going to talk a lot about that in segment 3. I appreciate you going down memory lane with me for so much of that career. So back in segment 3 to talk about this, of course, but first have a couple of sponsors that I want to go ahead and share with you. So first, here to talk to you about BetterHelp. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And we're near the end of the first month of 2024. So you've all had a chance to think through what are the things you want to keep the same about yourself or your life in 2024? What are ways that, let's say, some of those wishes to do something different are still a little bit of struggle? And that's where therapy can come in. You can get an opportunity to talk it through. Sometimes just having a licensed, skilled professional to hear what you're thinking helps you to put your own perspective into a different spot. If you're thinking of starting therapy, I would suggest you give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. They designed it. It's convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So celebrate the progress you've already made and look to make more. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Locked On Women's Basketball is also brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel, there is this Super Bowl coming on. I'm a New York Giants fan, so we have not been paying close attention to football for quite some time. But apparently, the Chiefs and the 49ers will play for a championship. And if you want to go to FanDuel, you can bet on the game and take advantage of that. Now, all who make their first bet of $5 or more get $200 in bonus bets if that bet wins. So just go to FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up for this offer. Again, that is FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I assume down in Dallas, they're not talking about football either at this point, which is fine. There's
I mean, I grew up a Commanders fan, and I'm moving to Dallas. Amount of hard time that I'm getting from family and friends. It's funny.
I'm a Giants fan just outside of Philly, so I feel your pain. I can imagine that it is epic, but of course, none of them are part of it. As we head toward the Taylor Swift Super Bowl, will be fascinating to see all of that. So let's talk about the Dallas wins. And Arike Ogunbowale is in our title credits, right? And Arike has grown as a player just since leaving Notre Dame. But when you think about the chance to kind of play with her, it's at a similar moment chronologically in her career to when your career really took off and found another level. What's kind of like job one when you think about what you are looking for out of Arike?
I mean, I feel like you have to talk about him as a package because Satu as well. Like you have her emergence this last season plus what Arike has been able to do year after year and where her game has got to. And I just think she's coming in, Arike specifically, coming into a moment of like true leadership, like really to take it to the next level, taking her team into her own hands, having say of, how to build the team, what it looks like, how they want to play, where, how her role has to ebb and flow and change a little bit to accommodate other pieces while still being able to be herself. And I think that's hard to do. That's a challenge. It's a challenge for, everybody, no matter where you are in your career. But I think it's an exciting time for her to be able to do that, given, like you said, how much her game has grown already. And, just the success that she's had. And then it's just a full circle moment for me because I got a chance to play with Satu in Turkey. So to be able to, we already kind of had that dynamic of like big sis, little sis. So to be able to, be with her, back reunited with her, be able to, she is such a great soul, both on and off the court. I just love her game. I love how she plays. I love how versatile she is, how tough she is. She's feisty. I love all of that. But then off the court she is the epitome of, the community aspect, the, being more than just an athlete and being able to, advocate for so many people, plus all the other things that she does. So I just think those two together, they're great pieces to be able to build an organization around.
You are 100% right to highlight Satu. And again, to me, it almost feels like there is still a gap between understanding what she just did in the 2023 WNBA season and where she is, let us say, thought about in the pecking order. I think that conversation can get overheated at times, but I do think it still is worth thinking about. I don't know that there is a player in the league with a higher ceiling. When we see her finally healthy and, essentially a stone's throw from 50, 40, 90 out of the season that she just had,
Yeah.
it's hard not to think of where she can get to and kind of wonder, because there aren't a lot of patterns for it. There aren't a lot of players where you say, hey, she was like Satu in this league. What does that look like in your mind? Like the finished product of Satu Sabally?
I mean, you just see how, the game has come to a point where that type of player that is extremely versatile, has the size, has the athleticism, can score at all levels, but also has the length and ability to defend. That is the primary position on every team of what's sought after, what they're looking for, what they need. Of course, it started with the Deladons, the Stewies, and, that is how it's kind of built out. And then you have Alyssa Thomas, you have these players that can just do everything for your team. And I feel like that's the type of player that Satu is. But I think, like I said, when I think about my experience as a player and what we did in Connecticut and how we built it, it was that retention, keeping that group of people together over time and being able to build around it, it helped the success. So I think that is what I kind of see a little bit of in Dallas, is that, groundbreaking time of if we can keep these pieces together and they can continue to develop and grow and keep succeeding and get into the playoffs, get in the experience, they're just right there on their way to winning the championship. And I truly, truly believe that. And it just takes the buy-in. And I think that is what I'm going to try to help to do.
Well, it's something you've brought everywhere you've gone. It's true about Satu, Elena and Stewie, these are elite players, obviously Hall of Famers. We'll be covering their induction ceremony someday. But when I look at what Satu just did, her assist percentage was 21.5, which is, essentially ATS, while at the same time she's hitting threes, which is obviously the one part of AT's game that isn't there. It's almost like she's combining the best elements of all three of those players. And to be able to have that as a consolidation season in her first healthy campaign, it just kind of blows my mind. I'm really excited to see it. But to your larger point about where Dallas is, I remember when you turned 30 years old, because Kurt Miller's talking point for such a long time was all of our core players are under the age of 30. And then he had to retire that talking point when you turned 30. I remember you said something like thanks, Kurt. And look, but when you look at this Dallas team, Natasha Howard is obviously more experienced. Everyone else on that team who played major minutes last year and is coming back, I just Odyssey is the other one. But other than Odyssey and Tosh, you're looking at 26 and younger, whether it's T, whether it's Satu, whether it's Arike, whether it's Kalani Brown, who appears close to a return. And I guess, are you able to sort of tap into those stories when you're talking to players? It's obviously a scenario where as a coach, you can't lead by example. So it does come down to how you're able to have that conversation. But how do you communicate that with the players as part of this role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you're just in your organization, obviously, you talk to other players, you have, friends or players that you played with in any different other experience in other organizations, but you don't really understand the dynamics and the sacrifices and the conversations that happen to get to that point of success. And I think that is something that can be cultivated, sharing some of those experiences, sharing those stories, and understanding that oh, this didn't happen just by showing up, this was, either a dynamic that had to be worked on, or this was something that, somebody had to take a sacrifice here or there to build that team, to build that trust, to build that family and that culture to be able to win. So, I think that for sure got a hungry Wings group that is willing to do that. So just kind of being able to share those experiences and how that happened.
Well, I can't wait to hear how it happens. I have no doubt in my mind that it will, and I am delighted that we all got the chance to share some of these memories. Jasmine Thomas, will not be the last time I'm going to get sentimental about it as you continue to grow in your career to come. So thank you for being part of the show. Thank you to all our listeners for coming and showing up for us every day. We will, of course, be back with you tomorrow, as we are 6 days a week. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.